here's quite a story. Now you've heard the industry line. Here's Rex Tillerson. He's the head of ExxonMobil, one of the world's largest corporations and most powerful corporations. And here's the line. He says, look, there have been well over 1 million wells hydraulically fractured in the history of the industry, and there is not one reported case of freshwater aquifer having ever been contaminated from hydraulic fracturing. It's a story of immaculate conception. All right? And it's complete and total bullshit. And Rex Tillerson knows so. I mean, these were ground-shaking earthquakes, 3 on the Richter scale, 4 on the Richter scale. Major events. And so what the industry kind of learned at that point was, yep, if you take a fluid and inject it at high pressure deep into the ground, you can cause an earthquake. Now since then, there has been an enormous amount of research on this. This is from a 1998 study done again by the U.S. Geological Survey. Earthquake hazard associated with deep well injection. And Alberta is included in this study because we've had lots of examples of where the industry has triggered earthquakes throughout the province. Turner Valley, in Rocky Mountain House, in Fort St. John, in a few other places. Let's take a look at Rocky Mountain House. Here we have, of course, we've got major natural gas, sour gas production. And here we see a whole series of earthquakes that directly correspond to gas withdrawals to feed the Strachan gas plant. And these earthquakes have been ongoing since the production of this gas zone. The earthquakes are not induced by fluid injection, but more likely by depletion of the reservoir through gas extraction. You check with Earthquakes Canada, sure enough, we're still getting earthquakes in that area, and they're all related to the depletion of the natural gas zone there. What about Fort St. John? Well, here's a study that was done not too long ago, I think again in the 1990s, and whole series of earthquakes north of Fort St. John in a number of oil and gas fields, and here's their conclusion. High pressure fluid injection must be considered as a possible cause of this seismicity. And they've had earthquakes as great as 4.2 on the Richter scale in Fort St. John. What about Arkansas? Huge shale gas play going on there. We take a lot of the salty brine waters that has been produced from that formation, and they're re-injecting it deep into the ground. Well, my God, I mean, they were going down 2 to 4 kilometers, and they had a swarm of earthquakes. We're talking about hundreds of earthquakes in Arkansas, all triggered by shale gas activity. And the Arkansas Oil and Gas Commission had to shut this down because the earth was shaking. So some of you might even be thinking, okay, well, all right, given this fact, and I want to, Jack Century, by the way, who's a great geophysicist, retired now, he used to work for Amazon, provided a lot of this information. But you're probably thinking, and as Jack is, well, all right, so we want to frack most of the province now for tight oil and shale gas, and yet at the same time we're proposing to spend billions to bury carbon in similar formations underneath the ground. Well, if we're fracking the hell out of the landscape, how the hell can we safely put CO2 in the ground? And it's a question that the Alberta government has not asked itself yet. Fortunately, the United States has. Here's a report from the National Energy Technology Lab that said, whoa, we're fracking the hell out of the Marcellus Shale. How are we going to be able to bury CO2 there? And what are the risks? And here it is. A major concern is that the hydraulic fracturing used to recover gas may render the Marcellus unsuitable as a cap rock by allowing stored CO2 to migrate upward through the formation. So here we have another story where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing in Alberta. You cannot allow hydraulic fracturing and carbon sequestration in the same region without having a terrible accident on your hand. Groundwater contamination. here's quite a story. Now you've heard the industry line. Here's Rex Tillerson. He's the head of ExxonMobil, one of the world's largest corporations and most powerful corporations. And here's the line. He says, look, there have been well over 1 million wells hydraulically fractured in the history of the industry, and there is not one reported case of freshwater aquifer having ever been contaminated from hydraulic fracturing. It's a story of immaculate conception. All right? And it's complete and total bullshit. And Rex Tillerson knows so. Here's a report that was done in 1987 to the Environmental Protection Agency. Unfortunately, we don't have such an agency here in Canada. And here we have a whole description of an incident in, I believe it was in West Virginia. I'll just read the middle paragraph. During the fracturing process, fractures can be produced, allowing migration of native brine, fracturing fluid, and hydrocarbons from oil or gas well to a nearby water well. When this happens, the water well can be permanently damaged and a new well must be drilled or an alternative source of drinking water found. In this case, the company that fracked this individual's well did not offer to replace his well water. And as was noted in the New York Times, who wrote about this report, because they went back and they interviewed all of the guys that collected this data, there were hundreds of other cases at the same time, but the details were sealed from the public when energy companies settled lawsuits with landowners. And as somebody who's reported for 20 years on this industry in the province, I can tell you I've met hundreds of people in this province who've signed confidentiality agreements once their water was blown, once their livestock was killed, once a member of their family were injured, once they lost most of their grass or their trees as a result of fouling events, contamination events, air pollution, you name it. It is common practice in this province to buy people out and then buy their silence. So there is no record of how this industry quite often performs badly. And then, of course, we have the Halliburton loophole. Now, why would you need to exclude hydraulic fracking fluids from the Safe Drinking Water Act in the United States if, as Rex Tillerson says, there is no groundwater contamination? Perhaps Dick Cheney, the CEO of Halliburton, knew better. And so one of the first things he did with the new energy policy for the United States was to put in this loophole and say, you know what, the EPA has no authority on the injection of fracking fluids and cannot investigate this issue, which only recently has been changed. Lots of this is an Encana event that resulted in a $400,000 fine for Encana in Garfield County, Colorado, where a 1,500-meter well was fracked, and people then found natural gas, benzene, and bubbles coming up through West Divide Creek. Hell of a mess. One of the landowners down there owns land by this creek. We'd not seen seepages here before Encana showed up and shook the earth, and continues to do so by fracturing the ground in order to stimulate production. Marvelous website, by the way, Journey of the Forsaken.